Okay, I'm so excited because my husband has no idea what we're doing. But I was like, oh my gosh, so many people are asking us for um, marriage tips, and I would say that our marriage isn't perfect, you know. No, but I feel like there's a few things that we've done and that have helped us, and so I just wanted to give you guys like the number one book that helped us in our marriage. And I literally just I went out and asked my husband, and I was like, babe, what book do you feel like if we could give somebody like the best tip for our marriage, like what book would you recommend? And what'd you say?
Pretty big for your marriage.
Yeah, so I grabbed it, and I'll put the link in the comments, so don't feel like you have to, remember this, but I like that book. How many times have we read it?
We've read it, but we actually take people through, like, we go through this with other married couples. So we kind of make it almost like a marriage course, almost, how we go through the book.
Yeah, so what we would do, actually we learned this we went through it first, I think, did we go through it first without,
We went through it with other couples.
Yeah, but wasn't that right before we were married, or did we go through it right on our first year of marriage?
First year of marriage.
Yeah, we went through it. So what we do is we would just do a Zoom with other couples, and we went through, it was one chapter
a week.
One chapter a week, and then we would get on the Zoom and we would discuss it with other couples, and then, and how it worked is during that week, like, we would have to sit down and either he would read the book. Did we have to read it together?
Well, you can, if you're not, like, working from home, most of the couples kind of work from home, but if you didn't work from home, then you had two copies and you kind of read and talk about it, or you read it together, just depending on your circumstances.
Yeah.
Because I think it was just different. Most couples kind of did it together, but then you had some that worked two different jobs or two different shifts, so they just kind of read it on their own.
Yeah, and I think that before we read this book, I feel like we never prayed together, right?
We prayed together, but it was like prayer to eat. Or prayer to, like, it wasn't like just being intentional, actually praying over each other's life and with each other about life. It was just, God bless this food to nourish my body. Amen.
Yeah, but we didn't even, I didn't even do that before that. So I was like, I feel like this book was, and it's crazy because we've been through it. We went through it when we were first married, and then we went through it again, I think last year with another set of couples. And then I feel like our growth, like every single time that we picked up this book, like this is a book that you can pick up again and again and again, like at different seasons of your marriage. And so that was like, this book has literally, like, absolutely, like, the number one book that I would recommend for marriages. What other books do you feel like have helped you, like, as a husband?
Help me or help us going through together, or
just any books that you recommend for marriage.
I love the Husband After God, because it makes you be more intentional, and it actually makes you have to not just read a book and learn something, but it, like, gives you prompts to actually go and do things for your wife. Like, I read it, and it had the one chapter about, like, submitting to your wife and washing her feet. And I think you were pregnant at the time I did that, and I washed your feet. But it was a good experience. But also, I just like to read, not just books specifically for marriage, but taking books or podcasts or whatever you listen to that's about life, and then applying it to your marriage, or applying it to being a parent, or just applying it to wherever you are in life. So pray big for your marriage. Husband After God, I like that. Love and Respect, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was the other one I was
so many different angles that you can go with that, but it was a lot of things that we know, but we don't specifically do, or we don't apply. And it's difference in, like, knowing what to do and actually doing it, or knowing what to say and actually speaking it. Like, my wife know I love her all day long, but if I don't tell her, then her cup won't be filled, and I won't be speaking her love language, which is words of affirmation. So it's one thing to know and a whole another thing to do.
That's another really good book, is the love languages. Yeah. Oh, because I was trying to figure out, what books I would recommend for people. Basically, like, the number one thing that I would tell you is that you need to grow. Like, or you have to be willing to, you just have to be
willing to grow. Yeah.
You
have to be willing to learn, because, like, all you know is what you've been taught and what you've seen through your parents if they're married, or people in your family who've been married. Like, that's what you picture marriage as being. Or you may have this TV couple that you watch, and the problem with that is you think it's perfect when TV just shows you all the highlight reels. It don't really show you the struggles and what's going on behind the scenes. So, and that's the one thing that I learned going through this book is like, not just us, but the people that we was going through this book with, we had so many things in common that we struggled with that wasn't really struggles. It was just things that we wasn't willing to talk about with each other, but we got on the course with these other couple, and they would say, it was like, oh, you guys struggle with that too? Yeah. And it was like little things, little petty things is what I call petty things is what we struggle with. But the problem was it was just never talked about, never addressed, so the pettiness just build up. We talk about dying by 1,000 paper clips. That's the pettiness in the marriage, the things that you don't talk about because you think it's not a big deal or it's such a little thing that is not worth bringing up. But sometimes your spouse need to hear that because they don't know that it's something that bothers you. Yeah. And sometimes it can bother you to death.
Dang. Like the shit, like he always, I think you had that analogy of like when you shake up like a Coke bottle. And then you shake a Coke bottle enough times, then all of a sudden it like explodes. And so like, I just feel like so many people ask us, and I was like, you know what? I think so many times, like we see social media, and like it looks like this perfect thing, like this perfect marriage, but like you don't know what's happening, you know, behind the scenes. Yeah. And like I'm just so thankful that we started, because so many people think like we started like this perfect couple and everything was like so perfect and blah blah, and I'm just like, no, like we took a lot of growth on both ends, like, and it took a lot of communication. Like I feel like we stunk at communication in the beginning. Wouldn't you say? Like we've been through so many marriage courses. Like if you really look at it, like if you really look back at like our marriage, how many times have we just been intentional? That was like, you just got to be intentional with your marriage and intentional with, like, this literally, like, just started out as, I just told my husband to sit down because I was like, babe, let's just do it. Let's just sit down because I'm really spur of the moment. I just like to move on. My instincts, I was like, you know, let's just make this video and then hopefully it can bless somebody else. But I feel like it's just starting. Like, so many times, like this book, I feel like this is such a good book for people to just like, just start. Yeah,
just start where you are in your marriage. Don't try to start at a place that you're not. Like, you can't expect to start this book and be where we are. No. We work to get here. So if you want to start this book and be where we are, you have to go back to where we started. Yeah. So start where you are in your marriage and address the issues and the things that you're going through in your marriage at that current time. And another thing and advice that I would just give to any married couple is like when you sit down, like, don't sit down to have an debate or don't sit down to have an argument. Sit down to have a conversation. And having that conversation is like both of us get a chance to speak and both of us get a chance to hear each other out. Like, don't interrupt and don't come with judgment. Like, literally sit down to have a conversation to work on coming up with a solution to, like, how can you make your marriage better? Because at the end of the day, I always say this, it's not me versus her, it's us versus everything that's trying to come against our marriage. Yeah, that's so and good. The one scripture that I've been reading this week that I've been wanting to show, speak about, because I give like speeches on my social media, and the one verse that kept coming to me now, I know why it keep coming to me, because I'm supposed to share with you guys, because we're talking about this book, and it said, under pressure, your faith life will be forced into the open and shows its true colors, and putting it in like, relating it to this, under pressure, your marriage life will be forced into the open and shows its true color. Think about everything that happened with the pandemic. What happened? There was a lot of people who got divorced. You know why? Because under pressure, having to stay home and actually have conversation with your spouse and deal with your spouse, under that pressure, your real marriage life was forced into the open and showed its true colors. Showed you what you haven't been doing over the past few years. Showed you what you've really been struggling with. And you had to sit and deal with those things. So when the pandemic happened to us, under that pressure, our marriage came to the forefront and showed its true colors. And then what it showed us, we've been building on a sound foundation and a strong a solid foundation. Yeah. So when something happened, like we didn't crumble because of that. We've been doing the work. We've been living with each other, and we actually love living with each other, having conversation about the most random things. And we've been putting in that work. So over time, when the pressure came, we was able to withstand that pressure and grow even more because of it. And we was able to actually thrive when that pressure came. So for me, it's understanding like what you're doing today for your marriage is not for today in your marriage. It's for years to come. This is going to be like when troubles really do come, like when things happen with my wife, people ask me all the time, like, how was you able to be there and be so strong for her? And I have to remind them, like, when we said our vows, it wasn't like I love you until things go wrong. I love you till you sick in the hospital bed. It was like, no, for better or for worse. And this is just that worst part. And I understand, like, this is just a piece of the story. And this is just a chapter of that story. So it's going to pass. So what am I going to do in this moment? So I understood I have to be that rock that I've been reading about in these books. Like, I had to actually put these things into place. So you can read the book, but if you're not applying it, then it's not going to, like, they always say, like, your marriage will work if you work it. So part about reading these books is, like, you still have to actually go out and put in the work to make your marriage be what you want your marriage to be. Yeah,
I just remember, like, what we like to do, well, that also came with, like, personal growth and stuff, but I just wanted to make this so that people know you just have to start, you know, and that's why this is a really good starting place. And we didn't even write this book, so it's like we
just go through the course because it's such a good book, and then we love doing it with other couples. It's like, if it touched our marriage, then I'm pretty positive it's going to touch somebody else.
Yeah, and so I feel like one of the things that, like, one of the best things that I learned, or, like, we see something that we don't want. Like, I remember when, like, we saw a really, really famous couple get divorced, and we thought that their marriage was, like, just so perfect, and we were like, oh my gosh, like, I feel like you're like, oh my gosh, well, we saw that, and then it's just a reminder. We use, like, it's almost like you use life experiences to be like, okay, we don't want that, so like, what should we not do? Does that make sense? Like, where you use other people's advice to help you, or, like, what, I don't know, what am I trying to say? Like, when you see, like, when they're divorced, we're like, okay, wait, we need to make sure. It's just a reminder to be like, hey, have we been intentional with our marriage yet? Like, it's always about being intentional with your marriage.
I know. Like, for me, it's like, it's quotes, and Chad and Ella, he said the quote one time, if you're not working on your marriage, then by default, you're working on your divorce.
Yes.
So when you see these things happen, you're like, okay, you've been talking about marriage, but have you really been working on your marriage?
Yeah.
Have you really been dealing with the issues and the struggles in your marriage? And I think that's what it comes down to, is like, no matter who you are, whether you're on TV and you're famous, or you live and you just, nobody knows who you are, like, you still gonna have struggles in your marriage.
Yeah.
And, like, how are you dealing with those struggles? So for me, it's always understanding, like, when you see people who've been married for a long time, like, asking for advice, but also when you see somebody who's been divorced, ask them for advice as well, because, like, you can learn just as much from those people, because they did something wrong, and you don't want to make those same mistakes that they made. Like, I listened to a guy, a preacher, he talked about a survey and they just interviewed, like, divorce guys, and it's like the top 3 reasons. They asked guys, like, what would you do differently if you to save your divorce? And he was like, I would go to bed at the same time my wife every night. He was like, when you go to bed together, you rest together. You go to bed and you rest together, and you wake up and you have you grow in intimacy with your wife when you do that. You rest together and you wake up and have conversations together. So I started doing that, not lately, because these kids are crazy. So
but that's just a season.
I know, that's the season, right? Because I was actually loving that, because I was well rested, but now it's like, now I just have to have time to actually wind down at night. So it's a little different right now because the season that we're in with 5 kids, so it's a little different. But just hearing that from somebody who's divorced, like, oh, like, I never recognized it. I never put 2 and 2 together, like. And then once I heard that and I started applying it, and I was realized, like, we was actually, like, when they say, like, I was like, yeah, grew in intimacy, yeah, right. But, like, it really is something that, like, I didn't understand at the time. But when I started doing it, like, we really were growing in intimacy, because we was, like, literally resting together and waking up having good conversations, because we was on the same page. I wasn't waking up tired and she waking up full of energy. Like, we both was waking up full of energy, fully ready to handle what's going to happen that day. So just little things that you can learn, not just from people who've been married for a long time, even though it is great to learn from those people, but you can learn from people who make mistakes and go through divorce as well too. So
yeah, that's so good. So we just wanted to come on here really, really quickly, and well, this wasn't really quick. I just feel like so many people have been asking, so that's why I'm like, let's just start recording and just sharing advice that we've learned over like, how many years has it been? 2016. Yeah. Listen, the best marriage advice that I ever received that I got. Actually, there's so much marriage advice. So the next video we gotta do. Stop. No, seriously. The next video we do is gonna be marriage advice, because like I feel like that's what this was supposed to be about, books, and this is what happens is we just kind of go off. But he didn't even know what it was gonna be about. I was like, let's just go on and just start. Because one time we started a podcast and then we never finished it, and I feel like because it wasn't our time.
No, what had happened was I was excited about the podcast, but she loved for me to go on and talk, and I don't like to go on and just talk. I like to go on and have conversations. So
yeah.
She no longer wanted to do the podcast, and I didn't want to just go on and feel like I want to talk to people. I like to have conversations because I think that's when you get the more out of me when I have conversations. So she didn't want to have conversations on the podcast.
Okay, all right. So, well, that's fine. It's all about communication. Listen, nothing's perfect. Our marriage is perfect.
Listen, we knew this. Like, we talked about this, and I understood that she didn't want to do it. So it wasn't like no hard feelings. It's just something that we tried, and the excitement wore off quick, and then we just didn't do it anymore. So. All
right. So we're gonna just start. I don't even know what we're gonna do. We're just going with the flow. So. Hopefully, I'll link all the books in the comments, and we will come back with another one that's like best tips that we learned in our marriage. Because this was supposed to be about books, but best marriage advice, and hopefully you guys have an awesome day.